Can invisibility cloaks save Russian troops from Ukrainian drones? Spoiler, no. What has Trump done in his first 100 days back in the office? And how much chaos can one president stir up across the globe? And is Belarus preparing for a new offensive under the disguise of military exercises? We've got a lot to unpack, so stay with us. This is The Gaze. Don't forget to follow our website, YouTube, and socials for more sharp takes and frontline reporting. We won't be showing you footage of Ukrainian soldiers in action. You can easily find that on your own. What we will do today is highlight one sharp, vivid example of how Ukrainian forces are pushing back against Russian advances, and let you draw your own conclusions. Let's focus on the Novopavlivka sector. According to Denis Bovkov, senior communications officer of Ukraine's 37th Separate Marine Brigade, Russian forces are relying on small assault groups, sometimes advancing on cross-country motorcycles for speed, but more often moving on foot. To avoid detection, they're using camouflage, including so-called anti-thermal cloaks, designed to block infrared and thermal sensors. But let's just say that tactic has its limits.
Russia delivered a fresh batch of so-called anti-drone coats to its troops in Lyman. One might expect them to be harder to detect now, but they've only become more relaxed and started wandering through open areas. It seems they believe they're wearing invisibility cloaks. Our pilots at the 63rd Brigade explained to 14 of them that they're actually wearing garbage bags. Denis Bobkov, senior communications officer of Ukraine's 37th Separate Marine Brigade.
According to Ukraine's general staff, there were 178 combat engagements on the front lines in just the past 24 hours. As of 8 a.m. on April 29th, Russian forces reportedly suffered 1,060 killed and wounded in a single day of fighting. So yes, those invisibility cloaks, not doing much, and not just the thermal ones. Now let's talk civilism. We all heard Putin recently calling for a ceasefire around his cherished May 9th parade, the one he clings to as a show of national pride. But the truth is, what he's parading is no longer shared history, it's historical distortion. During World War II, there were the First Ukrainian Front, Second Ukrainian Front, Third Ukrainian Front, where Ukrainians and Russians fought together against Nazism. Today, the Ukrainian Front is back, but it's on Ukrainian soil. And how many Ukrainians will be applauding Putin in Red Square this time? Exactly, none. While Russia keeps launching cluster munitions at Ukrainian cities, killing children in broad daylight, and calling it justified, it becomes clear there is no justification for that. None. This is not defense, it's destruction, driven by one man's lust for power and his disregard for Ukrainian life. So here's a final thought. Putin may wish he had one of those invisibility cloaks his troops are using, but I'll tell you now, that won't save him either. Oops, another mystery fire in Russia. This time it happened at a defense facility in the city of Murom. A drone strike reportedly hit the Murom Instrument Production Plant, also known as the powder plant, which produces ignition and initiation systems for munitions used by the Russian military and other security agencies. According to the governor of Vladimir Oblast, Alexander Avdeyev, the fire engulfed 720 square meters of the facility, including warehouse space and production areas. Since 2023, this plant has been under sanctions from both Ukraine and the EU. And for good reason. Russia's Ministry of Defense claims that air defenses intercepted and destroyed 34 Ukrainian drones across multiple regions, 15 over Kursk, 8 over Bryansk, 7 over Oryol, 3 over Vladimir, and 1 over Belgorod. What can I say? It's a long list, but I'm more curious about how many didn't get intercepted.
The enterprise manufactures a wide range of pyrotechnic devices used to activate emergency systems in aviation, maritime, and ground-based vehicles, as well as in space applications, including manned missions. Its main clients include the Ministry of Defense, Ministry of Internal Affairs, FSB, Emergency Situations Ministry, the state corporation Rosatom, the Federal Space Agency Roscosmos, and hundreds of enterprises within the Russian military-industrial complex. From a publication in the Russian journal National Defense in 2020,
100 days of Trump. What just happened? In case anyone missed it, Donald Trump made a dramatic return to the White House in 2024 after a sweeping election win. And let's just say it's been a whirlwind ever since. He promised to end the war in Ukraine within 24 hours, something he has repeated more times than we can count. This didn't happen. What did happen, though, is a string of chaotic moves at home and abroad. Here are just a few highlights from Trump's first 100 days back in power. Thousands of federal workers were fired. Whole departments, including the Department of Education, were marked for elimination. Elon Musk was appointed to lead the newly created Department of Government Efficiency, also known as DOGE. Musk oversaw massive cost-cutting across agencies, despite having no formal role. Even Harvard sued the Trump administration after losing billions in federal funds for failing to comply with vague new mandates. Trump introduced sweeping tariffs, some reaching 145% on imports from China, Canada, Mexico, and the EU. The result? Markets collapsed. Over $2.5 trillion was wiped from Wall Street in a single day. Trump called it Liberation Day for US economic independence. Well, not so much. If the goal was to liberate the markets from stability, mission accomplished. Trump's administration paused both military aid and intelligence sharing with Ukraine until Kyiv agreed to an unconditional ceasefire, a move widely condemned by allies. That was followed by a controversial Oval Office meeting with President Zelensky, which ended in public fallout and plunged US credibility as a partner into serious doubt. Then came Trump's Minerals for Security proposal, essentially tying US guarantees to control over Ukraine's natural resources, even in occupied territories. Many around the world called it what it looked like: extortion. And if that wasn't enough, US war plans for Yemen were accidentally leaked on Signal by Pentagon Chief Pete Hegseth. Trust in the administration's competence didn't just drop, it evaporated. Meanwhile, Trump's envoy, Witkoff, has already met with Putin 4 times. And the US position on the Russia-Ukraine war? Well, it's becoming more ambiguous with every meeting.
He is increasingly frustrated with leaders of both countries. He wants to see a permanent ceasefire. I understand Vladimir Putin this morning offered a temporary ceasefire. The president has made it clear he wants to see a permanent ceasefire first to stop the killing, stop the bloodshed. And while he remains optimistic he can strike a deal, he's also being realistic.
Let's talk about Elon Musk. He didn't exactly overthrow the government, though at times it felt close. What it did was oversee mass firings and sweeping budget cuts across federal agencies, all while leading to the newly created Department of Government Efficiency, the DOGE. For the first time in US history, a private businessman was granted extensive, largely unchecked influence over how federal money and resources are allocated. He regularly appeared in cabinet meetings despite holding no official position, and his deep ties to both China and government contractors raised serious conflict of interest concerns. Meanwhile, Trump's isolationist diplomacy has left NATO and the EU more than a little rattled. From G.D. Vance's offhand remark about annexing Greenland, which unsurprisingly offended both Denmark and key European allies, to Trump's ongoing flip-flopping on Russia and China sanctions. The US foreign policy compass seems to be spinning. And if you thought that was the peak of unpredictability, there's talk that Trump even joked, or not, about becoming the next pope. Yes, really.
As pope?
Yeah.
I'd like to be pope. That would be my number one choice. No, I don't know. I have no preference. I must say we have a cardinal that happens to be out of a place called New York who's very good. So we'll see what happens.
So there you have it. Just the first 100 days of Donald Trump's second term. We keep hearing promises to end the bloodshed in Ukraine, but also threats to pull out negotiations entirely if there's no visible progress. Well, according to President Zelensky, there is some progress, just not the kind we want. Russia is now assembling a new strike force in Belarus, and that might be the next thing to watch. Despite the Kremlin's repeated talk of peace, the reality on the ground tells a very different story. At a recent UN Security Council meeting, Undersecretary General for Political Affairs Rosemary DiCarlo reported that Russia has intensified its shelling of Ukrainian cities. Civilian deaths are rising month by month as missiles and drones continue to hit residential areas. According to the UN, the number of people killed and wounded has been steadily increasing, in direct contrast to Russia's public rhetoric.
We condemn all attacks against civilians and civilian infrastructure, wherever they occur. Directing attacks against civilians and civilian infrastructure is prohibited under international humanitarian law and must cease immediately. The Russian Federation's full-scale invasion of Ukraine stands as an egregious challenge to these fundamental principles, jeopardizing stability in Europe and threatening the broader international order.
And the warnings don't stop here. President Volodymyr Zelensky has stated that a new threat could emerge from Belarus. It's still unclear who the potential target might be, but there are growing concerns that it could be a NATO member. As usual, everything is being masked as joint Russian-Belarusian military exercises, the same cover used in the lead-up to Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022.
And look at Belarus. Russia is preparing something there this summer, using military drills as cover. And that's usually how they start a new attack. But where will it go? I don't know. Ukraine, Lithuania, Poland, God bless, no. But we all need to be ready.
Let's not forget that invasion was preceded by months of troop buildup along the Ukrainian border, under the pretense of routine drills. Now, similar patterns are emerging, only this time the threat may extend even further into Europe. So, is Belarus just staging ground or the next Frontline? Stay tuned, we're watching it closely.
Russia intensifies hybrid warfare against NATO members. The Netherlands has uncovered a cyber attack by Russian hackers targeting the infrastructure of a government agency. In addition, a critical infrastructure facility also came under attack, an incident The Hague believes could be part of preparations for potential sabotage. According to the Ministry of the Interior, Russia's cyber aggression is aimed at destabilizing society.
The fact that they are willing to sabotage a public service in the Netherlands is, by itself, is sort of example that they are increasing their risks. You look at the speed of which Russia is increasing its military complex, its equipment, its artillery. It's by far much faster than we do in Europe, even in the US. So that creates what I would mention as a sort of window of vulnerability for us.
Russia is indeed rapidly scaling up its military-industrial capabilities. The aggressor state reportedly produces around 300 T-90M Prorov tanks annually. Yet these tanks are not primarily used in the ongoing full-scale war against Ukraine. They largely remain within Russia's territory, the Wall Street Journal reports. Of concern as well is the Kremlin's intensified military recruitment campaign and its expansion of military logistics, especially along its northern borders.
While President Trump and many other world leaders are preoccupied with the war in Ukraine, some Europeans are increasingly concerned about what the Russian army is doing much more quietly along other parts of its border with Europe. About 100 miles east of the Finnish border, in the Russian city of Petrozavodsk, military engineers are expanding army bases. The Kremlin plans to create a new army headquarters that will oversee tens of thousands of troops over the next few years. From the Wall Street Journal.
We all agree in NATO that Russia is the long-term threat to NATO territory, to the whole of the Euro-Atlantic territory.
According to a report from Denmark's military intelligence service, there is a high risk of a large-scale war in Europe within the next 5 years if Russia perceives NATO as weak. Similar conclusions have been drawn by Germany's Federal Intelligence Service, which believes that a direct military conflict is likely to break out before the end of this decade.
We will continue to strengthen our armed forces, the Bundeswehr, and we will step up investments in our defense industry. We will work hard to meet our commitments to NATO's regional plans. We will continue to be Ukraine's strongest supporter in Europe to uphold its freedom and its sovereignty and its European future. And we will strive to make Germany, both its military and its infrastructure, the backbone of conventional defense in Europe.
According to Vadim Skibitsky, deputy chief of the Defense Intelligence of Ukraine, Russia has outlined 15 potential military conflict scenarios through 2045, 6 of which involve Northern Europe. He states that Moscow aims to complete the active phase of its war against Ukraine by 2026 and then redirect its main military forces toward aggression against European countries. Poland, he warns, could be the first target.
I can assure you his ambitions will grow. If Ukraine will not withstand, then he will go on and surely already has the textbooks of history, which tells who is the real owner of the territory of Poland, Hungary, and so on. So he will move on. That's why I told you to be pragmatic. We need to stop Putin in order not to take any risk, I mean for the world.
In response, the Kremlin has accused NATO of aggressive actions toward Russia. Putin's aide, Nikolai Patrushev, recently claimed that for a second year in a row, NATO exercises near Russia's borders are allegedly simulating scenarios for seizing the Kaliningrad region and launching preemptive strikes on Russia's nuclear forces. Patrushev also named several European political figures as posing a direct threat to Russia, including the UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer, President of the European Commission Ursula von der Leyen, and Secretary General of NATO Mark Rutte. Reported by Larissa Petruk, UATV News.
So today we looked at how Ukrainian forces are not just holding the line, they're dominating it. We broke down 100 days of Trump's second term, filled with blunders, backroom deals, and global fallout. And we unpacked growing signs that Belarus may once again be used to launch aggression, maybe even against NATO. What's your take? Is the world bracing for another escalation, or is it ready for one? Drop your thoughts in the comments and stay tuned for more with the gays.